Now, don't be shy. If you have a question, please do. Feel free to come up. But I will begin if nobody else has one to start with. And I know it's Minnesota, but that's okay. Mayra, I'll start with you. You mentioned that you do all the extracurricular activities that there are. What drives you to get involved with all of those, particularly the ones around policy?
Well, honestly, I got involved a lot in freshman year because I was always the person that would tell everyone, like, I would be talking bad about the teachers, like, oh my God, they never understand, like, how I feel. I'd be that girl that would just, honestly, straight up, I skipped class in middle school a lot. I was not the type of person that liked school. But then freshman year kind of just hit me where I'm like, what am I doing to myself to actually put my voice out there? And I started getting involved in programs, and I started actually enjoying a lot, like how my voice was actually getting heard. I went out there more. I started getting back up, and it was just a great experience to like start doing all these other things that actually did get my voice heard, because I know adults really do care about us. It's not that they don't want to listen. It's just that sometimes communication with the teenager and adults don't really work out. So at the same time, you had to come to a consensus together and actually be like, this is what's good for both of us, not just for one another.
Excellent. All right, no, anybody? No? Okay. I like to give space. That's one of the things that I learned is like give time for people to think about their question before they get up. But let's go to Jamie. You mentioned a quote early on in your presentation about gladness, the gladness in your heart meeting a deep need in the world. I've heard that before, and I always appreciate hearing it again. Was there one moment for you, or what was that moment or progression of moments that led you to finding that light bulb moment?
Well, I think in my early 40s is when I first came into the circle process, and it might be hard to believe, but I had never spoken anywhere in my entire life. I had never spoken in a class, in a staff meeting, nowhere. Part of the reason I think is people are always willing to fill the time. I was always sort of waiting for the space, and it's like, you don't have to say anything because people are always willing to talk. So I was shocked that I actually talked because I was given the invitation with a talking piece, and I think that really changed. I mean, I feel like the kids said that, but I found my voice in circle. So then, very seriously, it was the shooting at Columbine High School that really solidified that for me, because I believed then, and I do now, that if every morning somebody looked into those boys' eyes and said, how you doing today, I don't think that would have happened, and I still believe that. So that's a big motivation for me, because I do think violence is about disconnection and feeling like you don't belong, that you don't fit in, and nobody really cares if you're there. So the fact that a circle could welcome a kid in every single day, and it's like, we've been waiting for you, just really excited me. I've been a youth worker all my life, and I feel like I'm still a youth worker, and there are kids are our future, and so that's why it's really important to me. So.
So maybe for both of you, Maren and Mayra, what happens when in young people, in students, when they are asked what they think? Like, is there some physical change that you see in them? Is there an attitude change? What happens?
Good question. What happens? I think that we see a lot of energy at our events. In the fall, we see a lot of young people who are not sure what they've signed themselves up for, but they're curious, and so we start introducing evaluation methods, and maybe that doesn't feel approachable at first, but we work with them for a full day at our fall summit, and they start to see that it's really just an opportunity to like Mayra's presentation with the images, it's an opportunity to be that ear where you get to hear all of the voices at your school and turn it into something that matters by using some tools. And as a coordinator, we just get excited that we get to empower young people with these tools that we love using every day in our jobs. So that's what I see. And then when we get to the spring summit where they have a chance to share their projects that they've been working on all year, there's just so much pride in the work that they're doing, and excitement and ownership in their recommendations. And so then our job really shifts into how do we make sure people are hearing this at all levels, and how do we make sure that there's that feedback loop or that action that happens with young people's ideas.
Yeah, lots of energy, honestly. Like, with my group, once they come back into the classroom that we're in, they're like, okay, so what are we going to do today? What's our next thing we're going to hit on? What topic are we going to talk about? And overall, lots of encouragement to one another. Like, we also encourage the school to actually participate in this. Be like, oh, it's not just our voices. We want to hear every voice of the students here, because it's not just for our sake, it's for all of you guys. So at the same time, share your voice with us. Be open-minded with us. We're not just going to deny anything. Like, you guys, we might have different perspectives, but at the same time, this is our school. This is what we need together.
Hello. So, I don't know, anyone can answer this, I guess. I'm not asking this from the perspective of an educator. I'm asking this from a perspective of child protection, which is a lot different lens than education. When we get involved, it's often because the kids aren't going to school, because the parents don't know what to do, and because the schools have kind of labeled the kids as this way or that. So from everything that you guys have talked about, it's really more so about starting from before it gets to us. But once it does get to child protection and we have to go to the school and say, look, you guys still have to work with these kids that you've labeled and ostracized as troublemakers, and that you've given them this entire perspective that they aren't worth it. I mean, how would you recommend kind of trying to help from when it gets to my standpoint, like when it gets to this point, what do we do to kind of get people to take a step back and say, okay, look, it's not working that you're suspending this child because they're not coming to school, and then you're calling child protection because they're not in school, but you won't help them get there. So.
When I worked at a charter school, Cedar Riverside School, I had a days on the kids' school year instead of suspension. I go, you got 3 more days now. Now you got 6 days. But what? You can't do that. I go, well, I talked to your parent. Yeah, I can. So I don't think we should be suspending kids. I think we should be adding days on their school year, and then they can help you get your paperwork done and all that. And I don't know. They actually like that. I don't know if this answers your question, but you know, pilot studies always work, and then nothing ever happens with a pilot study. So many years ago, when I was working for Amicus, Hennepin County identified the top 30 families they'd spent the most money on over the years, and most of those families had kids involved in child protection at times. And what my only job was, well, North Minneapolis really mobilized in the faith community, and they were offering family mentors to these families. And every single family said, yes, I want this. And I don't know if it's because it wasn't systems people or whatever, but my only job was to keep circle when the family met their family mentor. And I usually knew all the kids in the house because they were from some school I had worked in, but I've always sort of dreamed about maybe child protection, doing some circle work with people, and maybe then involving school people and taking a look at it together about how you can wrap around or get pointers, like ask parents. I always ask parents, what do you think we should do? Because they're the best teachers we have of our kids. And so I could see you getting some circles together with school people and with your families and letting them figure it out. I think that'd be great. I don't know, just...
Any thoughts, Mayra? No? Okay. Excellent. Oh, do we have another question? Yeah, jump on in.
I was rehearsing, but I don't have it yet. So bear with me. So everything you're all saying, especially you, but I think the younger you get, the more sense it makes. And so you were talking about the first graders, probably makes the most sense to them. And then it ages up from there in complexity and politics and reason and all that stuff. So what, in your experiences, like what's like the... And here's where I'm stuck. Like the adoption cycle, when do adults get it? When do they get either youth voice, or they get a restorative practice with one another? Like what's that lag time compared to the work that you do with kids?
I think part of what we're seeing is that we sort of put up walls or barriers as adults, and we're nervous to admit that we don't know something. And so I think a lot of the work that we've been trying to do is how do we partner with adults to make this a safe space and to have those conversations. But yeah, it's really hard. I also frequently am with young people and think like, duh, why didn't I think of that? One example, we were just at an event with a group of young people, and we were presenting to them how the district spends their money and trying to get their feedback on our upcoming budget shortfall and how we should make cuts. And they were asking really great questions about professional development. What does professional development look like, and what are you spending money on as a district? And they said, well, have you ever thought about telling us what our teachers are supposed to be learning in the professional development so that we can help them figure out if they're doing that or not? And maybe that'd be cheaper. And of course, all of us adults in the room were like, no, but write that down and bring that back. So I think it's a continued practice of asking the hard questions and then being ready to hear their ideas and figuring out how do we actually act on them. I think as you've seen with Mayra, I mean, she's brilliant. But we just need to keep making those spaces to hear from young people and really to respect them as experts in their own education, because who better can answer and help us understand what it's like to be a young person and what schools should look like than the young people themselves.
Anything to add, Mayra? When do you notice that adults get it?
That's hard to answer. Well, like, well, just in general, like, personally, like, I know students feel very attacked once, like, they don't hear that the adults don't really think that we're smart enough to know what we want as our youth. Because at the same time, they're like, oh, you don't know about this because you just won't understand about it. It's just an adult talk. But we're really into stuff that's going on. If you guys saw, there was a lot of people who walked out on Wednesday for something that they're really passionate about. Imagine the youth right now. They're very strong-minded right now, especially when things are really getting hard. So once adults say that we don't know what we're doing, it just kind of puts like a wall right there where it just kind of shuts us down. And we're about to break that wall very, very soon. And we're just going to be really outpowered out there, and just trust us, just hear us out. We just really want communication with you guys. We really just want to be heard.
Yes, a few things that come to mind is when we're in circle, we're really listening to students, and educators need to get a little used to opening up about themselves too. That's kind of hard for some people. And I was thinking about how, I mean, it's always been my dream, let's start this in kindergarten, but when you think about it, I mean, I'm old and I can remember my kindergarten experience at Wyndham with Miss Lunseth in 101. And every day she said, let's get in a big old apple pie circle. And we were all so excited. And then first grade, we are in rows, and I'm a Williams, so I'm looking at the back of somebody's head for the rest of my life. And I'm thinking, we had the wisdom in the kindergarten classroom for what I think we need to do. We need to get in that big circle and listen. And just for part of the day, I just think that's really important. And then it's teaching kids how to be good listeners down the road, and listening to kids is incredible. It's amazing.
Hey, everybody.
Hey.
Not a question for you, just a comment about Alice Lynch. This is the first time I've been to an event since her passing, and feel like it's only proper to bring her up in this space, a place I know that she would be at. So yeah, I just wanted to take some time to acknowledge her and the work that she's done, and thank her for bringing me into this work.
Will you give us just a little background? Just a little background.
Alice was my circle trainer, and we worked together at Paladin Career and Tech. Yeah.
Right, and my apologies for cutting the applause. So honoring Alice Williams. Lynch. Alice Lynch, forgive me.
I have two questions for Jamie.
Oh, no.
My name is Alexis Koff. Good to meet you.
Nice to meet you, Alexis.
Two things. Can you speak a bit about the origins of Circle? I've heard a lot about folks thinking that this is coming from higher ed, from the ivory tower of the higher ed institution. And so I'd love to hear from you about like the origins, like who do we owe this to?
Thank you.
And then the second question is, when we hear about restorative practices in the mainstream, the narrative is always about suspensions. And so I've had a teacher say to me that they realize that restorative practices shouldn't only be in the dean's office, or when a student has, we can't curse right now, can we? Can you curse? Yeah. When S has hit the fan. How about that? Okay. That is restorative practices only as an alternative to suspensions, and only when a student has caused harm to the community.
Thank you for those questions, and I know you could give beautiful answers to both of them. I think we can credit the first human who discovered fire for the circle. I think that's how ancient it is. When humans discovered fire, we sat in circle. I think that at some point that all cultures were circle-based and sat in circle. And the Celts in Scandinavia, in northern Norway and Sweden, somebody's taken the time to put stones over all the little intersections of roads, forming the circle. But in my opinion, some cultures walked away from it and became more hierarchical and more authoritarian. And thank God a lot of cultures didn't walk away from it. So I think we have American Indians in the United States, or Native Americans. Sometimes people don't want you to use either of those terms, so I don't know what is the politically correct term, but they didn't walk away from that way of being. There's plenty of people in African nations that never walked away from that way of being with each other. And as far as suspensions, what I feel like is the more a school is steeped in restorative practices, which means sitting daily just in check-in circles and getting to know each other better and sharing, that suspensions are going to be minimized just because of the relationship and the connectedness that's happening. And so then, if a kid, I don't know, the only reason I think a kid would need to be suspended is if there was I don't know, it's hard for me to even think of a reason, but if there was a weapon involved, I suppose it would be necessary. But the thing is, that kid, I would send the kid off in a circle and integrate them back into the community in a circle so that they know they're still a part of it. And the more that's happening in the school, then it isn't looked at as just something that happens when a child's suspended. It's their way of being with each other, and so it's also done in a loving way. I used to work for a boss that fired people in circles. She was so kind and loving. You know, she was. She used to do that and offer them a road back once they got their act together. So I think we can even fire people in circle and be in a good way. That's what I think.
Thank you for your thoughts tonight. As we've been talking about both of your disciplines, I've been thinking about how the recent Parkland shooting has been an incredible example of youth participatory engagement and evaluation, and the reaction afterwards. And so just thinking about in your various disciplines, your work often arising out of a point of pain and frustration, what is it about that place that provides a verdant environment for your work to grow and be heard? And is it possible to start such conversations and have them be heard and be effective without that precursor?
So we start our YPE project with that question of what's getting in the way of the education that you want to have. And we really quickly see young people flip that into like, this is what we want our education to look like. And so I find that that's what brings me hope in this work, is that it's the way that young people are talking about their future and their dreams, and that's really energizing for us, and we get to spend time with them, which is amazing.
I heard through the grapevine and with a few connections with the county that Parkland, Florida is in, that they haven't been very open. They haven't really been accepting of restorative practices in that area of Florida, and I bet you they will be now. But I feel like the students, maybe they weren't offered that, and because from what I've heard, the voices of those students in that school since that's happened is they would be totally open to this. They want to be listened to. They want to be part of their educational process. So I don't know if that's really answering your question, but I feel like there's a lot of reasons why the restorative work is rejected in certain areas, and I think it's because of hierarchy. It's because of just the way we've been, and there's a saying that kind of goes that like some principals totally embrace this because they get to give up their power, and some principals totally reject it because they give up their power. So I think that's just the way it is with you know, the way it is. So we need shared power.
Any other questions? Anybody hanging back, just really wanting to do it but afraid? Yeah. Oh, here we go. Here we go. See, I knew there was one.
I was debating if I wanted to do it or not. But
Yeah, you do. You do.
I think you said something very important that kind of hit me. And you said you believe that Columbine wouldn't have happened if these kids would have had someone to say, hey, how are you? I got to give credit to a school that's over here that I believe saved my life. I was a student, and I ended up working for them for about 4 or 5 years, maybe 6. And that's MTS. You guys are up here over there.
Yeah, MTS.
I was a dropout. I was homeless. I'm in education now because I could have fallen through the cracks. And MTS was the first school. Todd Lee, if you guys remember him, he was the first one to ask me how I was doing and how I was doing in my life. And he said, you know, you're not dumb. You're missing these credits because you didn't go to school and because you struggled. And I guess I'm more speaking to you guys than to you, and just how important the work that you are doing and that all of us are doing, and how meaningful the how are you, the circles for Paladin that we do over here. I'm very fortunate to work with the coworkers that I have at Paladin Career, with Alexis, Terrence, but it truly saved my life. And I've been reflecting on that so much, is what is the difference between me and the students that have done these horrible things in the school? There's 2 things. Is 1, I had an adult that asked how I was doing, and 2, I had no accessibility to guns. So I thank you guys for doing what you're doing. I'm in education now. This is real, and it's on us, and it's serious. It's not just hey, this would be a cool event to go to. It's life-changing. So I'll leave you with that.
Thank you very much.
I think this will be our last one. So. Yes.
All right. So from a practical standpoint, I'm a middle school teacher, and daily I see the enthusiasm and the optimism in my students, and they are eager to share their voices. So what would your recommendations be for teachers and administrators to enable our students to be heard in their schools and in their communities, whether it's with restorative practice or with a program comparable to YPE?
Maybe I'll share a quick story that was when MTS was brand new. It was my first circle experience, and I went to St. Mary's, and so I got to do a lot of credit for school that wasn't classes, and I could say I did a lot of experimenting. And because when you call a school and say, I'll do this for you and you don't have to pay me, you can do just about anything you want in a school. So middle school principal Patrick Hobart back then said, yeah, Jamie, I'll throw you to the Lions on Friday if that's what you want me to do. He said, those kids aren't going to sit for you. And we were in there for 2 hours. He came and peeked in the door because he thought something bad must be happening, you know. Next time he came and played his guitar in there. But anyway, I think just because, I think kids were like, you just want to listen to me? Really? And we're just going to share with each other? I always start out with, who are you? How are you? What's been on your mind lately? I don't go in there with the curriculum. The curriculum comes out of what has been on your mind lately. So I think it'd be awesome to just invite some teachers in your administration to come in your classroom and sit with your kids and circle for a while and ask everybody what's been on your mind lately. And it seems really simple, and it is, but it forms these major connections, and it helps teachers, it helps educators, and it helps the students. So I don't know.
As a student, personally, yeah, it is great to build like relationships with teachers and all that. it's kind of scary at first because you're like, oh my God, like they're gonna just say something from like the 80s and I don't know what to respond to. So then you're like, oh my God, what if I don't know this? But like at the same time, we like building those relationships because then we get to hear the stories of like, oh, when I was in middle school, and we're just sitting here like, oh, wow, this is so different. And like we're just comparing our generations here, and it's amazing how many like projects just that teachers come up with that if they hear that you're passionate about something, then they build it somehow into like the unit. Because I was very passionate about my culture, and my U.S. history teacher 2 years ago, she made a presentation that's like, you guys should just make a project that's all about you. What is your culture? What is something you're passionate about? This is your own project. You do it. Everyone got an A in that project, and it was so amazing. And I've never been so happy to do a project about my culture that much. It was the way I wanted it. It was the way I represented it to everyone. And just overall, the communication between the teacher and the student is one of the best things because I have so many relationships with my teachers, especially if I went through hard things during high school, you know, because like there's those breakups, those dramas, all that stuff that teenagers go through. Like there's those teachers that give you a hand, like they'll be like, oh, you can sit with me in lunch. Like it's not really weird. People think it's weird, but I like it. I like interacting with teachers. It's really fun. You get to know fun stories. You get to know a little bit more about them and like what they really do truly care about. Because I always thought teachers never really cared about what students thought, but it was just hard for them to actually get out there and talk to us. But once you actually take the chance, then it's a win-win for both of you guys.
Well, I think that's our takeaway from the evening is just listen to one another. Yeah.